Well, as you know, we often call Mary Our Lady of Sorrows or the Sorrowful Mother. And when we depict her Immaculate Heart, there's a sword through it. And that comes from this gospel. Or sometimes there are 7 swords in the heart of Mary as we depict it, representing the 7 sorrows of her life. And the first sorrow of her life was what we read today, Simeon's prophecy. When they went to the temple, the holy man Simeon took the child Jesus in his arms and said his canticle of praise, and then he turned to Mary and uttered words that she would never forget. He told her that her son Jesus would be contradicted and rejected by many, and therefore a sword of sorrow would pierce her soul. And deep within, Mary gave her consent and never took it back. 33 long years later, she stood by the cross of her son as he offered his life for the redemption of the world. The sword of sorrow was still present in her heart, and now a spear would thrust into his. See, Mary was united with Jesus in his offering, first made in the temple 40 days after his birth, and then consummated on Golgotha. After the glorious resurrection of her son, the wounds of Mary's heart became channels of grace and a refuge for all who suffer. Now, I'd like to suggest that Mary's response to the sorrows of her life should become the pattern for our response to the sorrows of our life. And to explain this, I'd like to use the life of St. John Vianney as an example. John Vianney grew up during the French Revolution, and he decided at a young age that he wanted to become a priest. His father opposed this choice, but nonetheless, he went off to seminary. And one day, he was told that he had been drafted into Napoleon's army. And this was a mistake because he should have been exempted since he was a seminarian, but someone forgot to write his name on the list. And so he made his way to training, but after training, he became ill, and his regiment set off without him. They said, "When you get better, catch up to us." Well, he wasn't able to catch up to them, and so he officially became a deserter. And for 14 months, he lived in a mountain village under an assumed name. Eventually, he was granted pardon for that and set off for home, where he expected to find a warm welcome after being gone for so long. But when he arrived home, his father informed him that his younger brother, Francis, was drafted to take his place, and that his brother had died in battle. And then his mother, believing that she had lost both of her sons, herself died of a broken heart. Blaming Vianney for their deaths, his father slammed the door in his face and told him to visit the cemetery and to see what he had done to his once happy family. And Vianney repeatedly begged his father's forgiveness, but as far as we know, he never received it. Broken-hearted, he left his father's house, never to return. With this deep wound of sorrow and rejection, John Vianney had a choice to make. Would he spend the rest of his life blaming himself for a crime he didn't commit? Would he retreat into the blackness of his heart and shut it tight? Or would he find salvation in the crucified Christ? Vianney believed that on the cross, Jesus saw him, knew him, and loved him with all of his human weaknesses and sins. And he was certain that Jesus felt what he felt when his father rejected him. And so, prompted by the Holy Spirit, Vianney opened the wound in his heart to the love of Christ. And this brought about a profound transformation so that St. John Vianney became a spiritual father to thousands of people. His tender and loving heart united to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and the wound inflicted on him by his earthly father, who refused to forgive him, became the source of an inner impulse to bring mercy to all, especially those who are furthest from God. And so the same choice is with us as well. We all have sorrows, pains, and wounds in our lives, each one of us. Perhaps not as serious as St. John Vianney's, but ones that are very real nonetheless. Whether they were caused by our own shortcomings and sins, or unexpectedly without our consent, we have a choice to follow the pattern of Our Lady and with faith to unite our sorrows to the cross of her Son. And while still present in our lives, these wounds can then become, through Christ's love, a source of love and a channel of grace. So today, let us come forward and offer to God all of these challenges in our lives, all these wounds, all these places in our hearts that need healing, and trust that He wants to heal these, and ask Our Lady, the Mother of Sorrows, to also intercede for us.